When I was out on the footy field, it wasn't really about if I was good or bad, it was just about competing, hanging out with your mates, having fun, having a crack. The thing that really mattered to me was I loved it. I really loved it. I still do. I played one way, head down, go forward. I was young, of course, and I thought I was bulletproof. And one day, I got a tap on the shoulder, and that was the day I nearly died. When I say I nearly died, according to the doctors, I should have been dead. And it was a series of fortunate accidents which led me to the doctors in the first place. So what nearly finished me off was my heart. My dad was a Scot, and his heart gave out when I was 15 years old. A lot of my friends have said, yeah, your lifestyle, sex, drugs and rock and roll. You know, it wasn't that actually that got me in this position in the first place. It was my bonny, Scottish ticker. There's probably more about Scotland and me than just my dodgy ticker. They do have a reputation as a wild lot, and my father certainly lived up to that reputation. He landed in New Zealand in 1947, and after the war, he became a merchant seaman and met my mum getting off the ship.
And they kind of locked eyes, and he thought she was a rich native, and she thought he was a rich foreigner, and couldn't be further from the truth. Anyway, he jumped ship, and they caught him, and they put him in jail, and they gave him an ultimatum: either you serve in the New Zealand Army, or you stay in jail. So he joined the New Zealand Army.
He said, oh, OK, you're a New Zealand citizen now. There you go. Have a good life. So the Scottish soldier marries his Māori princess, and what happens? They have 11 children, and I'm the youngest.
John, in actual fact, was cheeky little shit, to be quite honest, you know. I mean, him and his brother Bobby were kind of rebels, you know. They were just a couple of little Maori boys that got into a whole lot of mischief, you know. And I remember at my wedding, Bobby and John getting drunk under the table.
I was 9 years old. I'll never forget, because I threw up everywhere. Of course, you think most kids would just be like, you know, that's enough of that, we're so sick, but not us, no.
But there was always a musicality around the family. I mean, my father used to sing in Scotland, and my mother, you know, used to do a lot of singing with the kapahaka groups. So music is on both sides of the family.
But not in the, you know, Von Trapp type thing. It was more like the, you know with the beers, let's go. So roll forward a year and a half, and I'm not even interested in music, not even thinking about it. And my sister tracks me down, my eldest sister, Christina, and she'd gotten a call from the guy, Danny Ryan, and he had a bunch of songs that he needed a singer for. My sister talked me into it, so I went and sang the songs. She chaperoned me, and one of those songs was Jezebel. Everybody, come on! 3 weeks later, the song Jezebel becomes #1 in New Zealand, and all of a sudden, I'm the accidental pop star. Kapow! And I'm just spinning out, you know. Front page of the papers and the whole thing. Because I'd knocked Michael Jackson off #1. Don't stop till you get enough, you know. Michael Jackson's biggest hit ever. Who knew where Montego Bay was? But it was the song that knocked Jezebel, my first single, off the #1 position. So I had 2 #1 singles and also a top 5 album in a very short space of time. It was absolutely nuts, really, and it got to the point, honestly, where I was sick of myself. So I'm overexposed, and I don't even know what overexposed means, and I'm definitely over being famous, and I was about as famous as you could get in New Zealand. You know, and it culminated in a situation where I was walking down an alley just like this, and ran into a bunch of blokes, and one of them recognises me, says, Jon Stevens. Another bloke goes, yeah, let's get him. So I had to either stand there and fight or run. I realised then that, gee, I need to get out of this place and go somewhere else. Fortunately, that choice was sort of made for me once again with Lance Reynolds, you know, chance arrival in New Zealand. And seeing a picture of me in the paper and reading the story. He called CBS Records, said, I'm Lance Reynolds, and I manage a band called Air Supply, who were, you know, had #1 hits in America at that time. And somebody from CBS drove him over a cassette, and he heard it, loved it, called me from the airport. We got on really well, and straight off the bat, he said, I will take you to America. You want to go to America? Let's go to America. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. Well, I've got nothing else to do. I just jumped on the plane and off we went into the great unknown. What an adventure. You know, little kid out of New Zealand, Walking down the Sunset Boulevard, just going, whoa, what's going on here? It's cranking, you know.
It's early 1981 and I'm working with some of the best musicians in the world. I'm also living in Beverly Hills, go figure, from Upper Hutt, New Zealand to Beverly Hills.
I was recording a solo record, and actually Lance was his first one to sort of get me writing. He said, you got to start writing.
Steve Lukather was playing guitar, he's from Toto. Nathan Watts was playing bass, he's from Stevie Wonder's band. William Smitty Smith from Bob Dylan's band. So I had all these guys, amazing musicians, and there I was, just a teenager.
Whenever that album, Lance, his business partner, had done a deal for the label, of which my publishing was included on it. I hadn't actually signed a publishing deal with them at that point. It was expected that I would sign my stuff to them. I said, you can't sign my rights without asking me. So I was offended by that. So I just went, nah. So kind of all hell broke loose. And I was ostracised.
I come back to Australia from Los Angeles, and I happened to meet a fella called Michael Browning. He was the manager. And he introduced me to another fella called Stuart Fraser. Stuart and I were like brothers, we're the same age, we like the same things. And after my experience overseas and also in New Zealand starting out, where I had so much pressure on me, I just wanted to hang out with a like-minded guy and make some music. And that's where Noiseworks grew out of, that sort of close-knit sort of brotherhood.
So we started playing at the Sydney Cove Tavern, and the Jet Place from day one was just jam-packed. People lined up down the street to see us. Next thing you know, Sony want to sign us. The name we came up with was DreamWorks. We were going to call ourselves DreamWorks. Then Stuart Fraser popped up, nah, it's Noiseworks. And we all turned around and went, yeah, Noiseworks, that sounds even better. That's us, we're loud, we're brash. We went back and told the record label they want to call themselves Noiseworks. They hated it. We went, great, that's it then. They hate it, we love it, get stuffed. And that became the cornerstone for Noiseworks. We did what we wanted to do, It was really cool. And that record was made on Stolichnaya vodka. Lots of pot. After that first record, we toured constantly, Our schedule was, 8 months on the road, 3 months in the studio, and a month off. Spending 3 months in a studio now is kind of impossible nowadays. Nobody does it, But back in those days, you would do that. It was a great way of recording because you just get locked into a thing.
I had an apartment in the city when they were recording at Rhinoceros Studios just up the road, and I remember getting a call one night, mate, come up and have a listen to this. I think it was the loudest recording studio session I've ever heard, and it was loud already, and then when the whole thing kicked in, man, it was just phenomenal.
INXS were downstairs making the X record, and Noiseworks were upstairs making the Love vs. Money album, and we were producing ourselves. Michael and Andrew, and they couldn't believe it. You can't produce yourself. Well, we can, and we did, and the band broke up. But we had a bloody good go. I think we definitely ended prematurely. There's no doubt about that in my mind. The creative differences that were going on, the drug problems that were prevalent at the time that were undermining the fabric of, the brotherhood. It's a rock and roll band. Shit happens. That's happened many times before. It'll happen again, I don't have any regrets about that. That's just a part of life and a part of learning. I got to see the world, and I got to see the world with my best mates, and we had a bloody ripping time. Joining INXS was one of those things, When I first played with them, it was basically me helping my mates out. There's a lot of pain there. Michael committed suicide, I knew how those boys felt because, one of my brothers committed suicide 6 months prior to Michael, so I knew exactly where they were. One of my proudest things for me is that, I helped them regain their confidence. Just, say, you guys can do it again, if you want it, if you really want it, I'll support you.
Well, I think he's shown that talent will win out. You know, he's one of those guys who people still love. You still book him for a gig, you'd still have him in the studio anytime he wanted because he delivers. If you've got the goods, and he's got it in spades, if you've got a voice like that, you'll always be in work.
What I do provides an escape for people from reality for a short period of time. Provides an escape for me too. Every night's different, and that's what I love about performing. Give it everything you got, whatever you got at the time. On stage, it's you know, all or nothing. Yeah, it's like a footy match, it really is. You got to get up for it. You know, you can't be half-assed. I refuse to be half-assed. That's me, folks. Yeah, 2000 Olympics in Sydney. Yeah, that was an amazing time, really, because I'd written a song called Carry the Flame, which I'd recorded on a solo record I'd done. Somebody heard it and they asked me if I could rewrite it for the Olympics. I said, yeah, sure. Yeah, 2000 Olympics in Sydney. Yeah, so I'll give it a go. I rewrote it and I was very proud of that, and I'm very proud that that they wanted to use it. So they called me and asked me if I'd like to run with the Olympic torch. I'm like, are you sure? And they go, yeah, we'd really like you to do that, you know. I'm saying, but I'm a Kiwi. I became an Australian citizen. Yeah, very proudly too. So what does it mean to be Australian? Coming from a Kiwi, it's a loaded question. What hat do I have on today? So I reckon at the end of the day, I'm as Australian as I'm a Māori. I'm as Māori as I'm a Kiwi, and I'm as Kiwi as I'm a rock and roller, which makes me, after 30 years of being here, as Australian as bro. I'm just, you know, proud to be a Mozzie, Maori Aussie. So this is my little hill, and on any given day, you'd find me running along this path. And one particular day, suddenly I couldn't do it. I ran out of breath. I thought that's a little strange, but I've been working so much and gotten so used to being tired that it felt normal, thinking that it's just from touring and late nights and etc. So I went to the doctor and he suggested that I get an MRI scan to see the veins in my heart, see what's going on. So I go have the MRI scan the next morning. I leave the MRI office. I drive 20 minutes to Bondi and I get a phone call. It's the doctor saying, get in your car and drive straight to Prince of Wales Hospital now. He says, and don't go home, don't talk to anyone, and do not exert yourself. Quote unquote. And then he goes, I don't mean to alarm you. He plugged me up and then he told me, he says your main left ventricle is 99.9% blocked. He said 9 months ago that was completely clear. So you're a very lucky man. Again, there's that lucky moments in time that sort of followed me throughout my life, thank God, because I wouldn't have made it through the weekend. I would have been one of those statistics that just dropped dead and you go, how did that happen? Well, he looked so normal, seemed so fit and healthy. That was me. I was that guy. I live very close to this little hill, and every time I come past here now, I give quiet thanks, because I'm still here. Full open heart surgery thingy down there. Ew, it hurts. I don't recommend it. For this particular program, for me to impart anything, is to just get the knowledge out there and share what's happened to me with the hope that whoever's watching this gets off the couch and goes and gets a checkup, because you never know.
He has a second chance, there's no doubt about that, because he was within a millimetre of me singing at his tangi at his funeral. I mean, could you imagine that? No, I don't want to imagine that. He owes Australia his life, in two senses.